Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to give about one more minute for people to finish joining. Just hold tight and we'll get started soon.
All right, well, welcome everyone to the webinar. Today, what we're going to be showing you is how you can reduce JD Edwards modifications, leveraging the Orchestrator and some of the UX One functionality. My name is Brian Rose. I am a manager here at Terillium. And with me today, I have Adam Ferris, who will be doing all the hard work. I'm just going to be introducing you to Terillium, who we are, and then going through some logistics of how you can put in questions and things along the lines of that. From an interface perspective for you guys, if you do have questions, feel free to put those in the little question box in the webinar. I'll be monitoring those as we progress through the process and make sure to bring those aware to Adam so we can answer those for you. From a who we are perspective, just very quick, Terillium has been around for 25 years. This is our 25th year this year. We're very excited about that. We have 170 full-time employees throughout the U.S. And, this is very key to us because we are a company that has one direction. We don't have a lot of subcontractors, and a lot of those are people who have been around doing it forever. 16 years is the experience level we have from an average perspective across all of our functional, CNC, and development resources. What we do, we are a big JD Edwards shop, so from implementations to upgrades, managed services, all the way through the software licensing perspective. So from soup to nuts, we can be that one-stop shop for you from a JD Edwards perspective to get you through the process. I'm going to go ahead and pass it now over to Adam to get you going on the webinar.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks again for joining us today. Just a little bit about what we're trying to accomplish today. This isn't going to be any sort of training on the UX One tool sets or UDOs, user-defined objects, or Orchestrator in general. We're really trying to get you to start understanding how these tools can be utilized to replace some of your old customizations and integrations throughout JD Edwards, which can help you get to a more vanilla JDE. A lot of this aligns with Oracle and JD Edwards' push for continuous adoption and being able to always take on the newest tool set and use the newest set of features for whatever you're trying to accomplish. So as we get started, we'll run down through our agenda really quick. We're going to talk about some of the UX One features and requirements, what those look like along with the Orchestrator, and kind of by each release, what's available to you. I know that we probably have a wide range of users online, probably some world users, maybe some EnterpriseOne users that are on later releases. So I'll kind of give you an idea of what features might be available to you right now and what features would be really beneficial to you in the future. We'll talk about some basic low-code, no-code customizations that you can do with the new tool set. We'll do a rundown of what today's examples are going to look like once I get into the system and actually do a little bit of hands-on. I'm also going to use today's examples to give you a level of effort comparison. So what I mean by that is I've got some slides that have broken down what the typical development time frame would be like for an old customization like that, and what the configuration timeline would look like for utilizing the new tool set today. And then we'll go into the demonstration. Next, we'll talk about some additional orchestration examples, Some of those I've pulled from a presentation that I was a co-presenter on at Collaborate, and we'll talk about ways that that we talked about that you could use some of the new tool set for that. And then at the end, we'll do a wrap up. All right, so first getting into the new UX One features and requirements. You can see this screen is really just talking about all of the new UX One features by release, when they came out, and what the install or architecture was that was needed. A few things to point out here, specifically the orchestrations and personal forms have actually been around for a while now. I don't think that many people really realize that those came out in some of their releases, and they haven't had an opportunity to really take advantage of those tools. Both of them continue to enhance with each of the new releases, and we'll talk about that. Some of the newer things that have come out recently that we've really been taking advantage of are the notifications and form extensions. Those are a little bit newer. We'll be talking about all 4 of those features today, though. If we look at past, present, and future tools by release, for UX One features, we can see kind of when each of these came out. A few of the ones that I really wanted to point out, the first was personal forms. So the initial release was with that 9210, where you could start to create user customized form layouts. They did an enhancement to that when 9212 came out, which allowed for power form support, tab sequencing. You could rename tabs, and then also copy and paste, control and move. And then another enhancement recently with the 9224, which allowed you to rename menu exits and rename the grid control headers. Another feature with the UX One that I wanted to point out was form extensions. So those didn't come out until 9224, but they're very powerful. They allow the users to add available business view columns to forms. So things that used to have a developer do for you in the past, where you had some fields that were within the business view hidden in the table structure, but they weren't actively on the form showing. You'd have to have some development done just to get those visible in the grid or in the header. Now you can put those straight onto the header or the grid as an end user. So I'll show you guys how easy that is. They've done some enhancements with that as well. The first enhancement was with 923. Where they supported adding available business view fields to edit the forms. And then in 9233, most recently, this was really a game changer, where they started allowing you to associate orchestrations behind these form extensions. You could add buttons and put orchestrations behind them to do things with different rows of data that were on your form. And I'm going to show you 2 examples of that today. Next would be with the Orchestrator Studio. So the Orchestrator Studio first came out in 9202, allowed for basic service requests, rules, cross-references, and whitelists to be able to be done. Every release since then has had significant features, so much, in fact, that we are encouraging clients to get to at least 9233 if possible, to kind of start building their orchestration library. One of the main reasons that we're encouraging clients to get to that release is due to that form extension feature where you can associate orchestrations behind it. That's a really powerful tool, allows for a lot of automation type features, and we're finding that tool can be used to replace a lot of old customizations that people might have done to forms in the past. And finally, just some overall additional features. The primary reason for showing you guys all these features and enhancement slides is just to show that Oracle and JD Edwards are continuing to invest in these improvements that you guys as users are requesting at the user group events, things like Collaborate and In Focus. So we encourage you to get out to those events and learn more about the new features and start to gather information on how your organization can kind of move forward toward more of a continuous adoption model that JD Edwards is pushing. The key is to really start by reducing your portfolio of customizations. That's a big part of this. And we hope that you'll get some ideas today on how you might be able to accomplish that in the future. So next, let's talk about some low-code, no-code customizations. So to give you an idea, if you were changing some form controls in the past, some things that you can do now with just the basic personalized forms and form extensions. You can do some renaming, hiding, and showing of form controls. You can move things around. I'm going to show you how easy this is in our demonstration. I'm just trying to give you guys an idea of what all is available. Change tab sequence. I'll show you how to do that. Tabs, rename. You can rename personalized form, hide and show from the personalized form. Grids, you're able to move along with either personalized forms or form extensions, and you can also change tab sequences as part of the form extension or personalized form feature. Within the grid columns, you're able to rename columns through the list view. You can use list view grids for that. You can do adds, move things, format things. For form and row exits, you can rename the exits. You can also choose to hide some if you would like to through the personal forms. For push buttons, you have the ability to move the push buttons around on the header area, and you can hide and show them based on a personalized form or a form extension. You can also add push buttons now with the form extension. Like I said, those buttons, you can now associate orchestrations behind those. As far as processing logic and navigation, you can replicate logic from existing applications through either that form extension tool plus adding an orchestration behind it, or you can also use some Cafe Ones. So Cafe One is the joining of two applications together on one screen, or maybe linking a website to one of your screens. You can call batch processes, UBEs. So I'm actually going to show you in the demonstration of an option with a form extension button that's with a interactive application, and then also one that's with a UBE. You can reduce required entry navigation through those tools as well. If you want to create kind of a workflow light for yourself, you can use form extensions and Orchestrator to do that. You can also create notifications that are based off of watch lists or orchestrations. Those notifications can be sent through text, through email, through the notification browser within JD Edwards. You have several different options with that. And then you also have the ability to schedule those. So once you have those created, you can put them on a scheduler, kick them off throughout the day, or if you want to have a specific requirement that triggers that, you can do that as well. All right, so let's talk about today's examples. So today we're going to show about 4 or 5 examples of ways that you could reduce some of those customizations that you might have had from the past. The first would be forms where you've modified the following. So fields that were hidden or moved, tab sequences were edited, or fields were made mandatory. So a lot of the fields in certain screens, some of them your company might not use. Some of them, the tab sequence doesn't make sense. It could make it a lot more efficient for the users to enter the data if they had an updated tab sequence. So what we're going to use for that example is the item master entry. So I'll show you kind of what the old item master entry looks like, and then kind of a simplified view that we created. Second option is going to be the forms where you exposed existing business view fields. So something that you used to have to go to a developer for and have them kind of modify that form for you. I'm going to show you how easy it is to bring those fields up to either the header or the grid and make them available. We're going to do that on the sales order entry screen, the power form, so the P42-101. I have a lot of fields. My background is in distribution. I'm constantly trying to find more fields for customer service to use for different things and to capture data. So I have a few fields that I typically end up using at clients, and I'm going to show you guys how to put it on there quickly. Third option is going to be a sales order approval process. So we all know that there's not really a standard sales order approval like there is for purchase orders. So I've had many different ways of creating that at clients. One of them has just been creating a speed status update that allows someone to review the order, check it, and then do a speed status update to put it to the status where it needs to go to kind of move it through the process. So for that one, what we did is we created a form extension button, and then we have an orchestration running behind it that once you're ready to approve that sales order, you can just click the row, hit the button, it's going to update the whole order to the next status, and it can process on from that point. Our fourth is going to be work order print from the work order inquiry screen. This is something that we hear a lot from our kind of shop floor team. They're asking why that's not in the row exit options for that screen. If you're in sales order inquiry, you have the ability to print a pick list. So why in work order inquiry can you not print a work order? So we have the ability now to add a button to work order inquiry. select a row, and print the work order on the fly right there. So I'm going to show you guys how that works as well. And then we created a custom monitor for that's kind of based on UDOs, and it can send out notification to someone who's in charge of looking at those. And so with this new tool set, all of these user-defined objects are managed within the web OMW, and someone has to go in there and kind of approve them if you want to share them, and then they have to share them with the users. So this is something that could alert that person a notification just based on entries that people create. All right, so let's get a level of effort comparison. All right, so to start, we've got the form where fields were hidden and or modified. Tab sequences were edited, fields were made mandatory. So this typically impacts about one object. You've got a development effort of maybe 1 to 2 hours just to get it working. And then you've got a maintenance effort through upgrades and ESUs of about 2 to 3 hours, as the types of changes don't normally show up in the ER compare during the retrofitting. So at the bottom of these slides, I'm going to kind of keep a rolling development hours and retrofit hours. So you can see it as of right now, we're at maybe about 2 development hours and 3 retrofit hours. For our second option, we have the forms where we exposed fields that were in the existing business view already. So objects impacted would be 1 interactive application, 1 business view. You've got a development effort of about 1 to 2 hours to get it working, and then also a continuous upgrade effort through or when you apply ESUs of 1 to 2 hours. So now we're up to about 4 hours of development and 5 hours of retrofit. Custom sales order process for the approvals to get the button added to the P42101 to update an order status based on rows selected. You've got 1 interactive application, 1 process option template to specify the version. Your development effort here might be about 4 to 8 hours, and your retrofit effort will be about 2 to 4 hours. So now we're up to 12 and 9. Then you go to customizing that work order print on the work order inquiry screen. An interactive application object is impacted, and then you've got 1 processing option template that needs to be specified so that you can make sure that you're selecting the correct version. Development hours about 1 to 2 hours, retrofit about 1 to 2 hours. So now we're up to 14 hours of development in the past, and then also about 11 hours to maintain that through each upgrade. The monitors section, you might have a table trigger that you have to create, there's potential performance impacts with that, or 1 custom UBE scheduled subsystem, or 1 custom workflow. So depending on which route that you went, you may have about 4 to 8 hours of development, and depending on how many recipients that need to be maintained or identified in that. For retrofitting for that, you've got about 1 to 2 hours of retrofit each time. So in summary, prior development for the examples that we're going to show you guys today, you've got about 22 hours of running development and about 13 hours each time that you do an upgrade or apply ESUs that you might need to spend making sure that those are working correctly. The example, the method that we use to solve those with the UDOs and the orchestration configuration, it took me about 2 hours and 50 minutes to configure all of these for each of the cases. And these are standard configuration going on. So when you do upgrades and apply ESUs, there's no retrofitting involved. It's just part of your standard upgrade process. So the time saver is pretty key with this. All right, so getting into Edwards. To start, we're going to start with that item master entry screen. So the old item master entry with no personalizations, here's what we're typically looking at. So we've got the basic item data, you roll down through that. Your item number is not a required field, so it can use a next number to create your item number. A lot of you probably don't use next numbers. You have some sort of criteria that you use for creating item numbers. You'll notice that GL class, unit of measure, line type, those aren't required fields. There's various reasons that you may or may not want to require them. As you get into the additional information, the weights and measures, lot processing, there's several fields in there that may or may not be important to your guys' business. So what we did is we did a simplified view of this, a personal form that can be shared. When I change to the personal form, now you can see that we have an asterisk next to the item number. That means that it is now a required field. I took a lot of that tab data. You'll notice that we only have one tab now, and I took the tab data out, and now you can work down through the left side of your screen and enter the item data. And then when you move on to the right side, you've got some of that lot processing information, as well as the shelf life days, things like that. So as I tab down through, you'll notice I'm just working down the left side of my screen all the way through each of the options. And this could make a much more simplified entry for your end users. And this might be something that you took the time to do as an organization if you're entering a lot of items repetitively. So when I click on the personal form icon, you can see that it brings up all of the different boxes. The boxes that I can remove, you can see the red dashes that allow me to take them off of there. If I was to want to edit the tab sequence like I did, if I click on this little box to edit the tab sequence, you can see where I've edited all of the sequence that I go down through all the boxes. So this is how I set up so that those tabs would run in order. If I click off of this and I go to the personalize exits, this is where I can define what the different row exit options are that I want to be able to see. So you can change those by taking them out or moving them around and rearranging them. If I didn't want to have one of these sections in here anymore, say that you don't want to give them the option to select back orders, check availability, or do cross-docking. If I wanted to remove that whole section, it's as easy as clicking this hide button, and it will remove the entire section for me. It moves it over to this right pane where I could add it back at some point if I needed to. But it's very simple to move these around. If I wanted to take the unit of measure section and I wanted to move it over to the far right-hand side, I could move it here. I could make the section bigger. I could add some data elements within this little box here. So it's a pretty easy tool to work with very quickly. And then once you save this, you can push it out to either end users or different roles or the entire company if you wanted everybody to be able to utilize this updated personal form. So I'm going to discard those changes, come out of here. All right, so the next example that I want to show you guys is going to be one of the form extension examples. So we're going to go into the order entry. All right, so you can see I've got a query running. I've got myself a grid that I have defaulting in here. Immediately, if you're familiar with this screen, what you're going to notice is that there's a few fields in the header that aren't normally there. So for instance, reference 2, reference 3, so this is the VRO 3, also user reserved date and user reserved reference. These are 4 fields that I use a lot of the time with my customer service team. If they're looking for additional fields to use for different things, or if they do a lot of EDI processing and we need some fields to bring in some valuable EDI information, we'll store it in these fields. So I'm guessing that most of you are probably accustomed to these fields. What I did is I just added these to the existing form through the form extension. Another thing that you're going to see on here is this button that I added at the end of this row of buttons on the Power Form, which is Approve Order. This is the button that has the orchestration working behind it that allows us to bump the status of sales orders that we're looking at for approvals. So if we want to go in and take a look at what's going on here. So when I click into the form extension tool, you'll notice that when I am over here on the right-hand side, the manage existing order, I have 2 options. I have the form and the grid. So depending on whether I have form selected or grid selected, that's how I'm able to add fields to those different sections. So to start, right now I'm up in the header, I'm in the form area. You can see these fields that I've already added. If I was repurposing any of these fields for something that I wanted to actually call it something other than reference, then I can click into it. I'm sorry, I need to click into it from the personal form and rename it, and I'm trying to do it from a form extension. My apologies. But if I wanted to move these around, I could take them and move them around if I wanted to add something else. So another popular field to be able to that I use a lot with this feature is end use. So if you scroll down to the end use field, which we use a lot in order entry, I can take the end use field and add it up here into the header. So what I typically do is I'll make sure that the section of my header is big enough to support the ad. So I can take the boxes, I can reposition them, I can come down to the end use, I just drag and drop it up to the top of the form area, and then I can drop it where I think it looks good. And now the end use field is part of the header as well. To add that to part of the grid, all I have to do is select the grid option. All right, and then I can scroll all the way over. You can see it's not currently part of the grid. Those other fields are that I had added already. And when I scroll down to the end use field here, all I do is hit the add button, and now it's added it onto the end for me. So now the end use is part of the grid. Like I said, this is something that used to take 1 to 2 hours for a developer to do for you in the past. Now it's something that you can simply do in a matter of minutes for your end users. You can save it, you can publish it, and push it out to them to be able to use later on. Another feature that I wanted to show you guys is we've got this button that's added for the approve orders. If I go to my associated orchestrations, I can click on this. You can see the orchestration that I have set up. It's called the Vanilla Webinar Status Update, right? So that orchestration is basically using a version of Speed Status Update that looks for order lines that are at 520 to 540. And if I select them and run them through that orchestration, it updates them to 540 to 560. The Speed Status Update program, you have the ability to lock in whatever statuses you want to be able to use. So you could specify it to just do a one number bump from 520 to 521, or however you would prefer for your order process. But if you had an approval process that you wanted to throw in there, it would be possible through this. If you wanted to create some other event off of a click, for instance, maybe you wanted to do it off of the OK button. All you would have to do is select control, put your cursor in your select control box. You can select the button that you want to create the event with. Click on that. You can say, do you want it to be on the button click, or do you want it to be post button click? So if you want it to be post button click, you could click that. And then your next step is to select the orchestration that would be associated, define your inputs based on that, and then you could go through and select your execution output and save it, and you would be able to set that up. All right, so let's run the orchestration that we have set up right now. I'm just going to close out of here. Right now we have our grid data shrunk down to the orders that are ready to be approved. So for instance, I have an order right here that's at my 520 to 540. If I'm looking at this as a supervisor, and I'm looking for all the criteria that might be ready to approve this order, so my inventory is in place, it's ready to be picked, I can validate that it came from a good source, we're ready to move on with this order. All I'm going to do is select the row, click approve order, it's submitted. I'm going to capture this order number real quick before I move on. I'm going to clear my records. When I do a find, here's my order. It's been updated 540 to 560. All right, and if we go back to the query that I was running where we were looking at 520 to 540, that order number is no longer there. It's moved on. So a simple process step, you can add a button to kind of create a very easy order approval process on the sales order side. The next option that I wanted to show you was the work order print. So I'm going to close out of here, go to my work order print screen. Here we have the work order inquiry. You'll notice up top that we have the work order print button. I do currently have a query running to query on any of my work orders that are a status 20. Those are all my work orders that are available to be printed. All I need to do is select the row on one of these, select work order print. I can go to my view jobs. You'll notice that it's processing right now. And then if I do a find and refresh this, we're done. All right, so here's my work order print program. I'm going to open up my output, and here's my work order. So once again, something that was not difficult at all for us to add with this new feature. It's a simple orchestration that's calling the work order print program. We're passing in the variable of work order number based on whatever row is selected, and then you're able to add that button, call the associated orchestration, and do that straight from the work order inquiry. This may have been something that you found valuable for your business in the past. You went ahead and you added it as a row exit option, which you have to be careful with retrofitting in the future. But now it's something that we could add back there for you very easily with a button on the header screen, utilizing the form extension tool. All right, the last option that I wanted to talk to you about was in regards with the notifications. I'm just going to go back out to the main screen. If you guys aren't familiar with the screen that you're looking at right now, this is one of the UX One role-based pages that JD Edwards gives you out of the box. I took a standard role-based page and I kind of tweaked it to make it my own. So that's another thing. If you aren't taking advantage of some of those role-based pages yet, and you do have them available, they're very nice to give you kind of some visual metrics, utilize the springboard, utilize the jet graphs to get some different types of data in front of your end users visually. So up here, we've got our little bell. This is the notifications. The last one was being able to notify the person who's in charge of all of these UDOs. So the user-defined objects would be personalized grids, personalized forms, form extensions, composed pages, which this is considered a composed page here in front of me. So any of those types of things that an end user is going to create that they would want to be able to push out to another end user or to a group of end users, you're going to have someone who's responsible for kind of reviewing those, approving them, and sharing them out with the proper groups. So if you want to create a notification for them to let them know that there's some things out there for them to take a look at, then we've got this here. So I was alerted based off of it running and letting me know that hey, there's some stuff out there to review. I can click on the link. I've got a message that I created for myself that says, there are UDOs awaiting review. Please follow the link below to accept or reject the user's request to publish. And then you click the link and you can drive yourself directly to applications based on that link. So what I did is I created a today query. So anything that was submitted today, it's taking me straight to that application, running that query and letting me know the things that I need to review for today. It's pretty powerful. It could be used in many different ways. Maybe it's for purchase order approvals. Maybe it's for approving vouchers or financial batches. All kinds of different ways that you could utilize that feature. They're kind of endless. And if you created some custom reports or custom triggers within the system that you're constantly bringing up with upgrades to do those types of things, you don't need physical paper printouts for that type of stuff anymore. If it's things that were driven directly from applications, that were derived from queries from the queryable data that's within your grid, you can now create notifications that will take them straight to the applications and they can get that information right within the screen as opposed to using a piece of paper from a PDF and an email. So a lot more powerful and a lot more time saving when they're going to react to those types of things. All right, so for some additional examples that you can think of for utilizing the orchestrations. So the first is just a basic flat file or batch integration. In the past, you utilized this process for many different types of things. The pros to it were you utilized the base Z-table process. It was simplistic, tool set and common. It was a common interface design. Some of the cons were it was timing sensitive, so things had to be very sequential, moving parts and breaking points throughout this process, and low visibility to errors. If you go to using this process as along with the orchestrator, you're utilizing all of that same base Edwards functionality. There's fewer moving parts and a reduced workload on your batch server and scheduler. That's because the orchestrator has its own scheduler and it's sitting on its own server. and you have instant error messaging and notification capability. So there are a lot of different areas throughout that orchestration of kicking off that flat file integration where you could capture errors if needed, and send back notifications to people, whether it needed to be just a message in their work center or it needed to actually send them an email. Really the only cons to utilizing it this way is that the tool set is a little bit of a learning curve because the orchestrator could be new to your organization, and then you may need to take advantage of an upgrade right now to even be able to do this. So those would be the cons to that. Also, you have the ability right now to do web service and API integrations. So it was base functionality. It's been proven over time. The problem is there's a lot of inputs. It requires a lot of development skill set, not only to create it, but also to maintain it in case something breaks. And it doesn't account for application customizations. If you moved more towards a platform where you're utilizing the orchestrator to do this, you've got simplified inputs. Application logic includes customizations. You have messaging and notifications that are capable throughout the process with this based on the orchestrator. It's a low-code, no-code approach, and you can process it end-to-end without chaining services or functions. Once again, your only cons here, or there might be a little bit of a learning curve to utilize the tool, and you might need to do an upgrade to get yourself here. The last is EDI. So I do a lot of EDI on the distribution area. To get good reporting or error handling out of EDI and JD Edwards, you basically have to build it from scratch. So with the use of the orchestrator, you can kind of maintain your old EDI process where you're going through a translator into a secure FTP. You're probably archiving your documents to some sort of archive folder. You're processing it through the 47 tables. And then once you get to the point where orders are being created, you have the ability to create emails where it notifies users that orders have come in a batch. They may or may not contain errors, and it can give all the order numbers that were created as part of that. This was an example that we showed at Collaborate where we had emails that were firing off to us based on if there were errors or not. It's something that's pretty powerful on the EDI front. And some new functionality utilizing that orchestrator that really helps to streamline that EDI process. So like I said, you can reduce the amount of scheduled jobs just because the orchestrator can maintain that. It's the messaging and notification capable, low code, no code approach. And once again, your only cons to doing this are you might need to do an upgrade for it to be possible, and you're going to have to learn the orchestrator tool set to be able to accomplish it. All right, so with the wrap up, give me 1 second. All right, so first of all, I wanted to talk about our party. If any of you guys are coming to InFocus, I wanted you to know that we are going to be there. We will have a booth, and then we do have several sessions that are going to be going on. We've got 2 that are going on Tuesday, 5 on Wednesday, and 1 on Thursday. We've got a workshop that's happening on Tuesday, August 20th from 12:45 to 4:15, talking about World to EnterpriseOne and beyond. So if you are World customers and you're looking to go to EnterpriseOne and what will that look like, that'll be a great opportunity to kind of hear more about that. If you guys are looking at these new tools and you're thinking, we definitely need to get there and we need to start talking about how to utilize these tools, maybe you've already done an upgrade and they're available to you, but you're not taking advantage of them, or you're at a point where you need to start thinking about an upgrade so that you can utilize them, feel free to reach out to us. We have 2 different types of workshops currently, one that's on UX One and one that's on Orchestrator. They are completely separate. So if you want to adopt the UX One tool set before you really get into the Orchestrator, we do encourage that just because a lot of the UX One tools, you start to use them more in the Orchestrator to kind of build onto each other. And those are workshops that we really, we build around you and what your needs are. So if you're interested in something like that, please feel free to reach out to us. and we can kind of talk about how we might be able to get you into one of those trainings. All right, so now we're going to move on to questions and answers.
So Adam, I got a couple of them here. I can go ahead and read them out to you. So the first one is, hi, can we automate the scripts using Orchestrator? If so, could you please elaborate?
Yes, this is something that you could do. I'm trying to figure out maybe what you mean by scripts. If you're meaning maybe test scripts, the Orchestrator is a tool that we've seen as possibly being a very powerful testing tool. You have the ability to consume data from a CSV file, and you could create an orchestration that could help you put in orders, put in work orders, many different types of things that you would have scripted processes for, and you would be able to absorb those and use those as part of your upgrade processes in the future as you keep taking these upgrades.
Okay, the next one is work order print example with orchestration submitted with a button. Does it work if I select multiple work orders in the grid?
No, currently right now that functionality works with the one that you have selected. The same would go for the form extension that I use to update the sales orders to approve it. Whatever the one row that I have selected, it was passing that order number into the orchestration and was updating it based on that. So currently right now that is a limitation there.
Next one, the API example looked like a SOAP example. Are REST APIs also supported with the Orchestrator?
Yes, REST is supported, and most of our clients that we've worked with to this point are actually utilizing REST services when they're doing these integrations.
The next one, when will the recording be available and how to access it? So after this session, we'll go ahead and make it available to everyone. It's being recorded right now, so we'll make sure to send it out. Last question is that we have right here is, can you run orchestrations over custom apps? So a lot of people create UBEs or 55s for applications. Are you able to run orchestrations over top of those?
Yeah, that's one of the big perks to utilizing the Orchestrator is that you can run over top of those custom applications standard as part of the tool, which is something that might be a little bit more difficult to do if you're not using a tool like the Orchestrator. I have a few more questions that have come in here. How do we activate the personal form manager? What tools release do we need to be on for this tool? Let's see, the personal form manager, I would have to go back and look at what the exact release was on that. If you could please, you've got my email information here. I can shoot you a follow-up email and let you know what release that was on to the person who sent this question. And to activate that actual feature, I can also quickly run you through what you would need to do to activate that if you're on the correct tools release.
Hey, so, Debbie, it's Brian. We can chat about that when I'm on site in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Next, we've got form extension can only add column or fields. Can we add some complex logic in the form extension? I don't believe so. I'm not sure what type of logic you would want to add there, but through the form extension tool, you're really just adding fields that are already part of the business view, and then you can also do processing behind the scenes through an associated orchestration if you wanted to add a button. So if that's the type of complex logic that you'd be looking to do, you could probably achieve that through an associated orchestration. But as far as adding fields, it's just going to be the fields that are at the header level or down at the grid level. What happens to personal forms when we do an upgrade? They come right up with you to during your upgrade. The only thing that you need to do when you upgrade them is through the web OMW toolset. You will need to approve them again from there and just make sure that they were assigned to all the correct users that had it assigned from the previous release. But they come up with your normal upgrade. Is Cafe One something we need to purchase? Cafe One is part of your standard foundational tool set. If you need help figuring out how to utilize it and some use cases, feel free to reach out with us and we can kind of help you with getting your team up to speed with that. After adding some form extension, if we want to modify the program, the form extension will the form extension be there or not? So are you saying, I take it that you're saying that you would modify the application that was using an existing form extension. My guess is that it would not come along when you do the custom application, because the form extension is going to be sitting on that standard app. And so when you do your custom app, you would have to do a new one, and you would also have to create that custom app with the ability to create a form extension from it. Do forms have to go through a package build? They do not have to go through what our traditional understanding is of a package build through OMW, old school OMW. All personal forms are managed through what we call the UDO workbench, or user-defined objects. So those get approved and promoted through web OMW. And that's how you would manage all of these UDOs. Do you notice any performance impact from form extensions or personalizations were added? No, I have not, and my clients who we have shown how to utilize these tools have not seen any impacts from the performance here. The only way that I could ever see that becoming a possibility is if you started adding some very, very complex orchestrations behind the scenes that were behind buttons that you had added through form extensions. If they were processing and churning through a lot of data, you may see some processing time there. But from the basic form extension and personal forms, no performance impact at all from that. So it looks like that's all the questions that we have for today. Once again, Brian, I think you said that do you know when
We'll be sending it out in the next couple of days. We're recording it right now, so we'll make sure to get it out to everyone who is on the call.
All right. If you guys have any more questions, feel free to reach out to Brian and I. Our information is below. Just shoot us both an email. We'd be more than happy to talk with you. Other than that, everybody have a good rest of the day and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.